The thing about men who get sent away to war is that some of them don't come back at all.
There's so many of us. They'll never get us all out.
Mrs. Cole? Kurt? Where is she?
Could someone please get Mr. Hilliard out of Dunkirk?
Welcome to the Ministry of Information Film Division.
Mr. Churchill is persuaded that film can show that this is a war America should be fighting.
If we're to capture the public imagination and their trust, we need a story to inspire a nation.
Dunkirk, the evacuation of troops trapped by the German advance.
It's very good.
I just wonder if it mightn't pack a little more punch.
Dunkirk, the miracle that put the fire back in all our bellies. We know how it starts. Twin sisters took their father's boat over to join the rescue. We know how it ends.
338,000.
Home safe. Now all we have to do is fill in the gaps. Mrs. Cole will need someone to write the slop.
Slop?
Girl talk. Women's dialogue.
I thought it was a secretarial post.
Oh, for God's sake, keep that to yourself.
Uncle Frank, a shipwreck of a man. 60s. Looks older.
We all have a part to play in defeating Hitler. Not this part. It's a corpse roll. He's dead before the end of Act 3.
Too long. Lose half.
Which half?
The half you don't need. People like films because stories are structure. When things turn bad, it's still part of a plan. There's a point to it.
All those people gave their sons to one war, and now their grandsons to another.
We'll have them weeping in the aisles.
Mrs. Cole, I thought you was under it.
I just can't do this anymore.
The work's good. None of them could have done any better.
You and me, given opportunities only because young men are gone. But to turn our back on those opportunities, wouldn't that be giving death dominion over life?
If all of this stopped, I'd miss it. I'd miss you.
Do you really have to smoke that thing? I mean, couldn't you just mime?
I can mime smoking, I can't mime smoke.
Say hello to the cast of Their Finest and the director, Lona. Thank you all for being here. We're so excited to have you. What'd you guys think of the trailer? I know. I was like weeping. I have chills in the back because I saw the movie and it is wonderful. Loved it. Congratulations on a great film. Let's kind of talk about how this all came about. I know this movie is based on a book by Lisa Evans. So Lona, how did this? What was the pre-production process like?
The two producers had both found the book and read it and tried to get the rights for it, but they were really good friends. So when they found out that they were both trying to get it, they decided to do it together. And then they approached me. I read the book and liked it as much as they did. And then I was doing a different film and some television. And in the meantime, Gabby Chapp turned it into a script focusing on Catherine's story with Buckley and with Ambrose. But the book is more of an ensemble book about this extraordinary period in British film history.
Yeah. I love this movie because it's a film about film. And it's also set in a wartime in World War II, but it has a rom-com feel to it. How did you go about sort of deciding on the tone of the film and mixing a little bit of comedy with drama?
It's in there. I think it's one of the reasons why I fell for it, that it has depth enough and quality enough to do justice to the many people who are still alive who were in that war, and also the people who worked so seriously during the war in the British film industry. But it's also light enough to share some of the love for filmmaking in a not so sentimental way, and there's some really, really good jokes, and they gilded them as we shot it.
Yeah, I loved it. And what a cast. Look at these two right here, but this cast is really bulked. It's amazing. So tell me, Gemma and Bill, about your processes getting, cast in the film, and what was that like?
So I had previously worked with Stephen Woolley, who's one of our two producers, and he sent me the script quite early on. I think, Bill, you were already attached, which was one of the draws, I've got to say. And so was Sam Claflin. And I'd wanted to work with Alone for years and years, and so they sent me the script, and I thought it was so elegant and beautifully written, and so nice to read a script with rhythm and wit, and it was quite fast paced. A lot of I mean, it was really influenced by that kind of screwball comedy that was coming out of the US in the 40s. So I loved it, and I loved the characters, and I loved that period of time. Such an interesting period of time for filmmaking, and also for women as well. So no, I loved it.
Yeah. How about you, Bill?
Well, I was sent the script. The script was easily identifiable as a knockout thing, and the part was great. And I'm drawn to that period particularly. Like a lot of people in England, they have an intense nostalgia for that time. Largely people who weren't there, because if you were there, you realize that it was a brutal time. But I love films or books or music or anything that has big stuff to deliver, but also doesn't forget to be entertaining and to be, in this case, a great night out. So it was. I love that balance. I get to play two parts. I get to play my part plus drunken Uncle Frank, and I get to play a chronically self-absorbed, pompous actor in his declining years, which was a stretch, because I had to do a lot of research. But I hope I got somewhere near it.
I was going to say, Bill is the comic relief in this movie, a lot of it, and that was probably a stretch for you because we've never seen you do comedy before.
No, quite. It's all new horizons.
Gemma, what was it like for you? This is a wonderful role in a movie made by women, about a woman, and I enjoyed that, being a woman myself. You've done a lot of action movies as well. What was it like to take on a role that was more, a period piece?
Yeah, I hadn't done a film set in this period before, and I mean, we wanted it to feel contemporary as well and relevant to now, and I think we have that kind of screwball comedy kind of rhythm and pace, but at the same time there's a lot of kind of naturalism in there as well, and it was great to play a character that was sort of. It helped that this film was set in the 40s, because she sort of just accepts the kind of sexism that she's exposed to as the norm. No one was challenging it, and so it's quite nice to play someone quite gentle and timid and back-footed and observant, and she obviously gets a bit stronger as the film goes on. I really did enjoy making this kind of movie. I mean, I like running around and jumping off things as well, but but this was quite tame physically in comparison to what I'm used to doing. It was great.
Yeah, there's one scene where you're in the office and the men who are screenwriting with you sort of just sit there as you try to get around a desk. What was it like to kind of play with that, that story arc where you're finding yourself and you're becoming a strong woman in this time that wasn't very, kind to women in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I like that she kind of. That was just the way it was. I mean, so she doesn't sort of retaliate. But I think that a series of events happen to her that kind of make her realize that actually she is quite clever and she's a good writer and she deserves better. But she sort of does it off her own bat rather than kind of shouting and screaming. I really love a scene where, so the desks are so close together that she has to kind of wriggle through, and it's the men deliberately do that so that they can have a look at her ass when she's passing. And then she gets so annoyed with it that she just sort of tidies the office up very aggressively one day and makes it all better, and that's the way that she sort of retaliates rather than kind of anything else. But yeah, it's very subtly done in the film. It's a nice tone within everything else. There's so much in this film that Len's managed to kind of get in without it feeling crammed. It just sort of glides, which is so there's all of that stuff, the social stuff, then the women's rights stuff, and the writing and the filmmaking, and there's just so much. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And then Bill, your character has a nice relationship with your manager, a funny one at that. What was it like, though? You mentioned before to play this playing an actor as an actor in this point in your own career?
Well, I think, it's like playing a painter. You can't play a painter, really. I mean, it's just a guy who happens to paint. And in the same way as I play a man who happens to be an actor. It was a fun part. I liked playing very much with my manager, who also had a Staffordshire pit bull terrier called Roxanne. And one of the scenes that we had to do was Eddie Marsan, who played my manager brilliantly, he had to come into the restaurant to meet me with the dog, and in his shoulder bag he also has a real sheep's head. And after the first take, the dog knows where the sheep's head is, and the sheep's head is in Eddie's lap. So Roxanne Eddie had to do, and Lona just said, keep acting, because the dog's head was buried into Eddie's groin throughout the whole of the scene, because he was just desperate to get to the sheep's head. So that was fun.
That was a fun. What was that like to shoot, Lona?
Well, I much prefer actors to shooting, but it is tricky with animals. But one of the big things in this film is that they want authenticity, optimism, and a dog. It's the buzzword in the Ministry of Information at that time. So I felt that this film, the overall film we were doing, should have all of that. And also there's a little mock-up documentary of an American pilot in the film. And in that little film, there's also authenticity, optimism, and a dog. Yeah. But there are things I love more than dead sheep and violent dogs, yeah.
And that American man in the movie is Jake Lacy, as I'm sure some of you guys know from Girls. And what was he like on set? I know you have Sam Claflin as well, and Jake Lacy, Jack Houston. What was it like working with these actors?
It was great working with Jake. He was such good fun, and he was very, very clever. He's such a smart actor, and he had to play dumb. And me teaching him to act was always, it just made me laugh because it was such an unlikely thing. And being in the tank, we liked being underwater. That was the beginning and end of my action career.
You were in the water a lot in this.
Yeah.
What was it like? You mentioned there's a documentary in it, and then there's a film in the film. What was it like kind of balancing all these little films within this bigger project?
Well, the film is a tribute to filmmaking, and it has, and I felt doing that you have to be somewhat sophisticated, but in the way it's shot and the way it's edited, but what I hope you feel is the joy that you as an audience know that language so well, that it has so many elements and so many layers, but I hope it still feels really light and entertaining, because that's the most important thing. I really enjoy those technical challenges, but it's something I enjoy more in private, because when I am at work, of course, it should be about the characters and about the tone and the humor, and not so much about that, wow, it's exciting to try and do something that looks exactly like what Technicolor looked like then. Yeah. But it is really beautiful. I didn't do the cinematography, so I can praise it wall to wall.
It does look amazing. And what was it like for you guys to play in this time period with the clothes, and what kind of research did you do to prepare for the role?
Oh, it's such a great period for the clothes. They were so chic, and they looked after themselves. And I think, during the war, I think it was one of the things that they kind of took pride in, was kind of making sure that they looked together. And if you look at the pictures from the Blitz, people did really take care of themselves, and they really cared for each garment, and they would fix them and wear them over and over. And I loved working with our costume designer, Charlotte. She was very collaborative, and most of my costumes were from that period. And it's really when you see the character emerging, the kind of my prim kind of secretarial type character. They knew how to dress back then. They really, they were chic. Nowadays, we just chuck stuff on and we don't take any pride.
And this was in the midst of a war where bombs were going off left and right, and these women and men would still go to work and then have to run down to the subways to take shelter. What was it like to kind of play with that part of it? Because like we said, it's a comedy, but there's also a serious factor to it with being in World War II?
It was important that we were the war was present. It was ever present. So you were always hearing planes going over, or bombs going off, or the detritus of war all over you. One of the opening shots is me rushing to work, and there's been a bomb that's gone off, and I'm late for work because there's a bomb in the way. And I mean, it just gave people this sort of sense of purpose and absolute sort of necessity to just get on with stuff and live in the moment, I guess. And I guess Katrin, my character, she really latches on to writing this propaganda film because it's like the most important thing in the world to her, because you could die the next day, and death was everywhere. But apparently, people that lived through the Blitz talk about how it was so wonderful as well for the communities, and there was this real sense of community spirit and humour at the same time as, obviously being terrified. Yeah.
And what was it like for you, Bill, thinking about all of it and being in a movie about this time period with a mix of comedy, but the seriousness of it?
Well, it was a great opportunity because I'd never done it before, and my family were obviously. I was born just after the war, and it was the great event in our lives, and in the lives of the people in the UK in modern history, obviously. And I grew up with stories from my mum and my dad, about that time. My father was in the RAF. My mother worked on the buses at nights. She worked nights during the Second World War, which was not a great gig. It was scary, and as Gemma says, people died, hundreds of thousands of people died. It was a brutal time, and you never knew who was going to be around tomorrow. It was. I love the fact that the film gives you a real sense of what it was like, and it's a timely thing because it demonstrates how people can, when confronted with real danger, as opposed to invented danger, they can combine with compassion and courage and tenderness and focus on the things that unify them rather than the things that divide them. And therefore, I think that's partly why people have nostalgia for that time, because life was simplified, through the fact that you were just, you had one great thing to concern yourself with. And people did concern themselves with each other's welfare, and they did come together in a wonderful way, and it did bring out the best in people to some degree. Also, the trousers. I mean, that's when trousers were trousers. I don't know how you feel, gentlemen, but I promise you it's a relief to put on a proper pair of trousers. None of that tight jeans stuff. Yeah. And as Gemma said, everybody did look kind of great, because I think in terms of clothes, everything has been downhill since that period.
Yeah. The pants are a little lower.
Yeah, quite. Too low, in my opinion, but what do I know?
And what was the vibe like on set? Where did you guys shoot? And the props were incredible. I mean, the stage sets, it must have been really unique and cool.
They are really good at that in England. And of course, everything you see, they've kept. So most of or all of the props are real. And I love that film can take you to time and places. It's this... that when you go to the cinema, you're in a different place, you're inside other people, you're in a different time. I think that's one of the basic things I really love about cinema. The room where they write the script, Gemma and Sam Claflin and Paul Ritter, they have a writer's room where they ping-pong about the story, and that room is a build. We've shot in Pinewood and in London and in Wales, and the set itself, it was so sad to leave it. I wish I had a room like that somewhere in my life where I could, and I think when you've seen the film, I hope a lot of people will want to become script writers, because it's, you can see how much she begins to, or Katrin's character begins to taste blood and enjoy the work, and you can see how Buckley, Sam Claflin's character, understands how precarious life is, as they say, and how important the film is to them. The overall story is to get that film made, and then underneath that is their love story and how each of the characters change. And of course, I love film so much, and I know more about that than if I'd made a film about, I don't know, butchers or trousers. So
or dogs.
so that made it easier, and to share that love for cinema and just show the audience things that I have loved since I was 5 is a bliss.
And did it inspire anything in you to become maybe a screenwriter? Because your character is first put in there to just help with the female perspective, but she really creates the story of the film that we end up seeing at the end.
Yeah, I love that about what happened, what that was going on in that period. People were just getting thrust into position, you know, into work positions that they'd never thought they'd be any good at or enjoy, and she just sort of takes it on and is actually brilliant at it. I did love that. One of my favourite scenes is a scene where we're brainstorming and we're just coming up with ideas, and it's all turning into something else, and it's really exciting and thrilling. And I thought to myself, well, you know, that would be a good thing to do. And actually, since the film, I have started doing that with a writing partner called Jessica Swale, who's absolutely amazing writer, and she's been guiding me with the writing. I mean, I can't invent things, but she helps me. And it's funny, I had to learn to type on a typewriter for this. Sam and I had to learn to type, and I took it very seriously because I wanted it to look authentic and using my fingers, you know, the pinky finger for the A. And Sam just went, nah, nah. And he didn't really look like he was really typing, to be honest. I've got to say that now. Whereas mine is accurate. And since then, I've gotten into typewriting. It's really geeky, but I bought myself a 1940s typewriter, and it's something really gorgeous about typing on a typewriter and hearing the click clack, and I loved that, all of that writer's stuff, and ripping out the paper from the typewriter and giving the notes. Loved it.
Yeah. And I'm sure you did some research, right, to play that drunk Uncle Frank. Like, what kind of? To get in character.
How dare you? I in my early years, I put in a lot of research. But fortunately not while we were shooting. Did I do any research? Other than that, I didn't do. The script is pretty cool and it tells you everything you need to know. So in terms of research, I was covered.
And you had a beautiful scene where you sang a little bit. And it brought me back to your Love Actually days when you were a pop star.
Yeah, well.
We have to ask you about, everyone's really excited about this mini sequel. Tell us anything. Are you in it,
sure.
right?
Yeah, no, I'm in it, and everyone's in it, and everyone's back, and Hugh Grant and Liam Neeson and Keira Knightley and Colin Firth and Lucia and Andrew Lincoln and Chiwetel Ejiofor. You can probably guess that I've been saying this quite often over the last few days. They're all back, and it was very, very cool, and they all came back to try and stop children dying of extreme poverty in 2017 completely unnecessarily and preventably. And on May the 25th, you'll get to see what's happened to everybody in the 14 years since the movie was made. And I've seen Liam Neeson's one, and don't miss it, and don't miss Hugh Grant's, because it's hilarious. And Richard Curtis, who wrote and directed the movie, has done a brilliant job of imagining what might have happened to everybody since then. And it'll be very satisfying, and with a bit of luck. And it's wonderful that, because he started Comic Relief Red Nose Day in the UK and now here in America, and it's raised millions and millions and millions of dollars and literally saved millions of lives, largely children's lives, who would otherwise just quite simply be dead. And so you get the opportunity to watch it, and you send a couple of bucks. And if everybody sends a couple of bucks, job done.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate you guys doing that for such a great cause. And before I go to audience Q&A, Gemma, I have to ask you, you've been a Bond girl before, but there's all these rumors that maybe Bond will be a woman next time around. Would you like to see that?
Yeah. I don't know. Would that ever happen? I'd love to see that. I think it would be great.
Well, you got to write the
Jemima Bond.
Yeah, Jemima Bond. Well, you said you're into screenwriting, so let's write that script about a Bond lady, shall we? All right, I want to take some audience questions, so who's first?
Hello. So while you're working on the film, and it's a period piece, and while you're doing your research, is there any, as a director or as the actor, was there any literature or film or anything that really stood out to you that you said, I want to get that from my actors, or I want to put that into my character?
The films from that time, I can recommend to anyone to take a weekend and do a little film festival at home. to see some of those moving, beautiful, intelligent, very varied films from England at that time. But you should, for us, it was more as an inspiration. We didn't want to do a museum piece, but there is something about the everyday lives, the impeccable acting, which is something that I fell head over heels for. But you have to make it your own and not just. It would have been kitsch if we had tried to go all the way. And the book is, I can really recommend the whole book. There are a lot of books from that time, and there's a lot of inspiration in the film from real people, especially Gemma's character was an existing, or inspired by an existing woman who did write scripts at the time and did write slop, as they called it, the women's dialogue. But and some of the other characters too, not Ambrose Hilliard, the matinee idol, but there were others. Ham actors, and those are inspirational as well. But I remember we agreed that Ambrose is a good actor, and that's because when the film within the film, where you meet Uncle Frank, that it would be. It wouldn't work if that acting had been pompous. You had to, and also it's great that Ambrose Hilliard actually can act. And the great thing about Bill Nye is that you can just agree, okay, I'll be a good actor in those scenes, and there you go. And they really are very moving. I would like to see more Uncle Frank films.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
Who's next?
Since the film is called Their Finest, I wanted to know in each of your careers, what was one of your finest moments?
Oh, wow. Bill's got his already. He's ready to go.
Only because I think one of my finest moments was when I went on a set of Pirates of the Caribbean and they put me in computer pajamas with white bubbles all over. They put 250 white spots all over my face. They put me in trainers, which at my time of life is enough to make you want to kill yourself. They gave me a skull cap with a bubble on the top of my head, and then they showed me pictures of Davy Jones, the Squid Man, and somebody said action. And the reason I select that as my finest moment is that I didn't go to the airport because it was one of the toughest days' works of my life.
Bravo. What about you, Gemma? You have one?
There's lots of weird things that happen to you in your life as an actor. I mean, there's been a few sort of stage... Actually, one of my finest moments was I opened this beautiful... I know it's a bit boring for you lot, but I opened the most beautiful theatre. I was the first actor to play in it, called the Sam Wanamaker Playhouse, and it's a mock-up of it's the most gorgeous gilt wooden theatre with... You've been in there, haven't you? And seen... It has a painted ceiling, and I did the Duchess of Malfi in there, and we were the first people ever to perform in it. And it's all candlelit. There's no artificial lighting in there, and it was magical. And I think that was my finest moment.
Sounds beautiful. And an education director over here. That's a fine moment, huh?
Yeah, I think there are seconds here and there, sometimes even minutes in the films I've done where I am proud, but I'm really self-critical. But this film has many, many of those moments where I just really enjoy it. And it's what touches me is that the producer, Stephen Woolley, sometimes you feel that he sees sections of this film the way I would listen to a 45 record as a child, that just hear it again and again and again and again, that new song that had just come out. And he's like that with this film. I can see that he would sneak into the cinema to see that last scene again and again and again. And that is really moving. Yeah.
Well, great fine moments. Nobody wants to know my fine moment. This is one of them, but who's next? Here we go.
I guess my question is, I'm currently involved in a production that is it's about war. And my question is how did you all prepare to correctly portray the thoughts and the feelings that you have when you're surrounded by war? And just because, in in this country, I haven't been around that yet. And so how did you correctly study and do your work in order to, you know, bring the thoughts and the feelings of being in the middle of World War II to the screen?
Well, I don't know what it's like either, because but yet it was something that I think we had to kind of have in the back of our minds, especially you know, my character's house is bombed and things happen to her and people die, and but I think, you know, for me, I didn't think too much about that. I think the focus of this film is about the film inside of it and the necessity. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm answering the question well, but yeah, I didn't focus too much on it. I think it was kind of the attitude of from what we, you know, I read about the Blitz. People kind of just got on with it, and if you thought too much about what was going on, you'd probably go loop-de-loo. So there is that attitude in this film, which is also quite a British thing of getting on with it, keep calm and carry on, and it really is how the characters are in the film.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my job in the early part of the movie, and in fact for most of the movie, is to portray somebody who is pretty, as I said before, pretty self-absorbed, and his concerns are pretty domestic. But and thankfully there was an extra scene between Gemma and I placed in the movie after we'd done the main body of the shoot, which is that scene at the end where we discuss the situation generally, and I think that was very. It's a marvelous thing. It made everything hang together, and it gave us a resolution for both Gemma and I and each other, kind of thing. I think, like Gemma, you know, you just had to kind of have an awareness that they were under enormous pressure. But people get institutionalized in those situations very, very quickly. They have to. It's probably some kind of safety mechanism. You just have to, otherwise you'd probably go insane. And I don't think it's necessary, personally, I don't think it's necessary to feel any of those things in order to portray the role. That's a kind of radical remark these days, but I know it to be true.
I enjoy working in England very much for many reasons, but one is that not all actors there are method actors, that you can just be in the scene and play the moment, and I think you have to have or take the right to portray something that you've never been, or as a director to feel you have some sort of expertise about how it is to be someone you're absolutely not and never will be. I mean, if you've sat waiting in the dentist's waiting room, being scared of that, in that sense, you've touched upon what it must be like if you enlarge that up to, you know, being on death row or something. And that little expertise about what it is to be a human being, plus curiosity, research, giving other people influence, I think that, and doing your best, I think that then you have the right to do it, because otherwise you can't tell any stories until you've experienced everything. Gemma has just been Joan of Arc, and I mean, that must be hard to identify with that and do it on stage every night. But that it's your job, you're actors. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, this film is so great. It will make you feel all the emotions, I have to say. And you can see it in select theaters April 7th. So make sure to check it out. Thank you guys so much for being here. We loved having you.